Ryan McKeegan. I'm the Chair, Assistant Vice President of the Los Angeles Regional Consortium, also known as LARC. I'm honored to welcome you all today to a NOVA training, which is an important opportunity for us to strengthen our shared understanding, support compliance, and advance the work of the region. LARC is pleased to offer this NOVA training series to support our colleges, K-12, and regional partners by truly providing clear, practical guidance across key reporting areas. Today's session will specifically focus on K-12 strong workforce, grant processes, functionality, and region-specific regulations. Please note that this session will be recorded and made available on the LARC YouTube channel. We are very fortunate to have our partner and our colleague, Ryan Hatcher, leading this series. Ryan is a former Chancellor's Office consultant and a recognized expert in community college workforce programs and the NOVA system. He has led major data, reporting, and grant management initiatives for the California Community College Chancellor's Office and served as a key NOVA training resource from 2024 to 2020 to 2024. We're grateful to have his expertise with us today. With that, I'll turn it over to Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much and happy to be here. This is a fun one. K-12 is one of the more interesting programs in NOVA from a functionality standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to be going through, there's a lot to cover on this one. So I'll be going through these slides pretty quickly, but if somebody does have a question, I will be monitoring the chat and looking for hands up. So just go ahead and throw a question in and I will answer it. But let's get started. This is our training on K-12 SWP. All right, the agenda, similar if you've been to some of these trainings before. I always start with the background, kind of the rules, the law, the policy, because it's important to understand that when these programs are set up and when this functionality is made in NOVA, it's always based on the legislation. You know, they don't just decide how it's going to be. Almost every decision, everything that you see on the screen can trace back to some sort of regulation and policy. And that's just always a really good thing to kind of remember when we're looking at these. So let's start with why K-12 exists, because there's a reason it's in NOVA and the reason it exists. I'm sure all of you know this, but I'm just going to point out a couple things that are really important to remember about K-12 when it comes to functionality. And a lot of that is the collaboration part of it, right? We have this to support essential collaboration. One of the really complex things about this program in NOVA is that there's a lot of different roles and different partners, and you can kind of make these very large applications and ensuing plans and fiscal reports that include, you know, a dozen more different agencies across your region. And so it really is all about that collaboration. And then similarly, you get a lot of financial collaboration too. One of the really important things about K-12, and you see this through the legislation and through the functionality, is the focus on matching funding, of leveraging other funds to support this work. This is supposed to be a connector program, and that's the way it's set up to be run. But yes, this is officially the stated purpose for K-12. It's all about connecting community colleges and K-12, and K-12 LEAs for partnership, making sure that students have clear pathways. So let's start, like I said, with the rules. So K-12 is an extension of SWP. It's actually in the same ed code section, also R&I, which has an upcoming training, rebuilding nursing infrastructure as R&I. They're all part of the same code section. So K-12 is based on a lot of the same regulations, the same 4-year plans that govern the strategies around SWP should also be impacting K-12. They're both run by the RCs. The RCs were actually kind of established by SWP when that program initially got created. And so it was natural then to put the RCs in charge of running the K-12 version of it. And just a few other things that the code section spells out here. It establishes the funding formulas. This is all kind of set in law, the funding overall, and then all the match. This whole the relatively complicated match of this program, where it's a different rules for the uh, ROPs, COEs, and JPAs versus other LEAs. That's all in code as well. And also kind of the application requirements, what you have to fill out as part of the application. All of this is spelled out. None of this was actually kind of dreamed up by the chancellor's office. They're just following rules. Also, the selection committee makeup. This is also spelled out in the code. One of the important things to point out is it spells out the committee makeup. It spells out that they have exclusive authority at the RC level to select recipients and funding. Um, it spells out the positive considerations, which, as we all see, is a part of the application we're going to get there, and talks about leveraging, like I mentioned, this leveraging other funding sources. One of the things that it does do is give the regions a really good amount of flexibility on deciding who to fund and also kind of some of the minutia of how they do scoring, which is something we'll cover in a minute, but that does vary from region to region because the law allows it to. Uh, I probably could share the presentation file to follow along. Um, there's a question as to whether or not we can share the presentation file. We will be sending it out afterward. I don't have a way to do it immediately though. So we will get this to you ASAP. And in the future, if we want to share it beforehand, we absolutely can. So here's there's essentially four bills. Like I mentioned, it's all part of the same ed code as SWP, but these four bills, if you just want to trace it back, are the four bills that really impact K12. AB 1808 set up the program. It also set up TAPS and PCs simultaneously. Then there's been a few changes made to it. They've tweaked eligibility for COEs and ROPs, changed allowing CT facilities program funding or disallowing that particular program funding, additional reporting. So these are just different things that they've tweaked to ed code. And then this positive considerations has been kind of a moving target. This changes periodically, the different things that are positive considerations in the application, which we'll get to in a little bit. That's things like rural designation, unemployment rate. There's a whole list. We'll get there. So these are the things that have changed. And so the law is a bit of a moving target. K12 has had more amendments than most, but it is, that's where it is. I also include in these, and to someone's question before, I do send these out. We do attach these. I think they put them alongside the YouTube videos when they're posted. So you'll have access to all these links and everything. They all work. There's just a few few historical memos. Like I mentioned, funding's a bit of a moving target. So apportionment of unused funds, they did that in 2025. This was for some funds they should have spent but didn't. They've also changed policies around unspent TAP funds. And they had this audit, which was actually kind of a big moment in K12 historically. They had an audit in 2023, and there were some questions about equitable distribution of PCs. So this actually established a process for making sure that that is done in a more equitable fashion. So a few kind of changes, but besides those, these are the normal memos that we get on an annual basis. They haven't released round 9 yet, so I just included the round 8 ones, which you guys should be already familiar with because these applications went out last or were submitted last year. So these are the memos. They do this every year. I just have them here for reference, but we'll look at what these applications actually look like. Like I mentioned, this is the funding. This is the funding that each region gets. It's all based on that funding formula from EdCode. So SWP K12 or K12 SWP and NOVA. Let's talk about the history here. So Nova's been around for about almost 10 years. Actually about 10 years now. K12 was added pretty early. It was one of the first, I think it was maybe third or fourth program to be added to the system. And it was added when everything was hard coded. So that's since changed. Now Nova uses shared functionality and allows program managers to create their own programs using a kind of a standardized toolkit. That's how they make most programs now. Most of this 50 plus grants that is used all over the chancellor's office, use that shared toolkit. But the first, I think it's 6 or 7 programs in Nova, which includes SWP, K-12 SWP, Adult Ed, Perkins, the old nursing program, just as examples. Those are all hard coded. And what that means is that everything in K-12 SWP, with a few exceptions, is put there by developers. It's not something that the chancellor's office staff can change. It's all hard coded. So if they do want to make changes to this application, it needs to be through the developers, which just means it's probably not going to change anytime soon, which is fine because the law doesn't change very often. So they do update and tweak it. We'll talk about a couple of recent tweaks later. But generally speaking, does not change much from year to year. The exception is, of course, the positive considerations, which do shift occasionally. And again, that's kind of the extra credit part of the application, and we'll get there in a minute. Um, yeah, so SWP has been there for about 8 years now, because I think we're about to kick off round 9 at the later part of this year, which makes sense. So here's the standard life cycle for SWP K12, K12 SWP. I keep getting that backwards. Here's the standard life cycle for K12 SWP in Nova. It is a 10-quarter duration. That's what we're going with now. I think that has changed in the past. With biannual reporting, so twice a year, every year, there's reporting. So for every plan, there's essentially 5 biannual reports. 10 quarters, 5 reports. This is generally the way it works. This does shift a little bit from year to year, but normally the application opened in August. October, they're due. They get scored in November. The awards are announced in December. In January, the performance period begins, which you can see here, right? Round 7 began in January. This is fiscal year in January of 2025.
What?
And yep. Oh, someone was saying something. I lost it. Um, So yeah, this is generally the cycle it works on. Performance period begins in January and runs through June of, well, 2.5 years later. So all the K-12 programs in Nova are under K-12, and that includes the TAPs and coordinators. So this is actually just kind of the way it works because this is an old legacy program. Everything's nested under K-12. But you get all your functionality. This is what it looks like for most users. If you actually look at this from an admin standpoint, you get a lot more options. This is an old program, has a lot of functions. For example, this funding deferral was never actually used by anyone. It's the way they intended to do funding and then decided to drop it a couple years ago. But there's a lot of functionality in here. And like it says, menu options differ based on user roles. There's different views of the same thing depending on your access. And we will talk about the importance of roles very soon. Within this program, there's a lot of different functions, right? Like I mentioned, it's 8 years old. They put a lot of money into building out all these features at the chancellor's office. So in addition to the actual normal K-12 functions, this is also where the taps and the PCs are located. We did a whole other training on taps and PCs, so I'm not going to talk about them too much today, but they are very much connected with K-12 SWP as a program. You also have a relatively unique competitive application process. This was the first competitive application in Nova, so pretty much all other competitive applications in the system take their roots from K-12 SWP. But the unique thing about K-12 is that it is managed at the regional level, which is not done by any other programs. You get, plans, standard Nova functionality plans and fiscal reports with custom surveys. The regional selection committee and allocations is a unique thing for K-12. Like I mentioned, the competitive process is managed at the regional level and separated by regions with their own allocations. They get to decide their own scoring and their own reviews, which is all managed. They have their own selection committees and selection committee chairs. So this decentralized way of doing the competitive application scoring and everything is unique, but very much in line with how this program needs to be run from a policy and regulatory standpoint. One thing that's important to note is specific to K-12 every year. This is the only program with the possible exception of adult ed. This is really the only program in the system that really goes with LEAs. and the kind of our K12 world. And so every year for this program, Product Ops gets an updated version of CDS codes, rural designations, ADA, unemployment rates, all of the different data sets that go into kind of the functionality, they update on an annual basis. And then I mentioned before, there is technically funding deferral. I'm just pointing this out because it's fun. There's a whole funding deferral section of functionality that was never used because they went a different direction on how to handle unused funding. So roles is very important. Or roles as a topic is very important to talk about with any program in Nova. Roles is how you actually interact with the system. Now, anyone can have a Nova account. It's super easy to get a Nova account, but that doesn't mean much. Just because you have an account, especially if you're not an EDU account, you can't really do much or see much. If you have an EDU account, then the system automatically titles you educational user, and it gives you generally the ability to look around and view things, but you will not be able to interact with any programs. In order to interact with programs, to create plans, to edit or submit or do any of that stuff, you need the right roles. So with K12, here's the main project roles you have, right? So generally speaking, on the projects themselves or the applications, we'll get to the difference between applications and plans and projects soon. These are the roles. You're required to have a lead. You're required, or you're not required to have an alternate. That's optional. Actually, no, sorry, you are required to have an alternate in SWP or in K12. That's why I put it here. You're required to have a lead and alternate, just kind of a backup. The lead controls everything and can submit. The alternate cannot submit, but has the ability to edit everything. You need a project contributor and reporter from every partner agency, and you need a project viewer contact from a collaborative partner. Um, you can also have these optional if you'd like as well. It's kind of just reversed. Uh, but the point is here, you're required to have a contact from every partner. Like I mentioned earlier, this is built as a very collaborative application where you have different agencies involved, and the system will make you have essentially a lead to be responsible for the planning and reporting from that agency. When we get to fiscal reporting, for example, fiscal reporting is actually split in K12 by agency. And so these folks will have access, and depending on how you want to run your program, it's designed so that you have these people from the individual agencies submitting uh, their chunks of that fiscal report before the whole thing gets approved. So it's meant to be pretty collaborative, which is why you have to have contacts for everything. And these are the roles in the plans. And if you've been a part of these trainings before, you will know there's a big difference between the roles you assign on the contacts page of the actual plan or application, which is what we're looking at here, and what we call system roles. System roles apply to much more than the actual individual application or plan. They apply to everything. They're system-wide. And so, for example, if you are the institution project manager, which is a very good thing to have if you are running multiple applications, or you're responsible for, I don't know, the whole district's K12 SWP plans, for example. You'd want to have this institution project manager. It's set at the system level, not in the plan itself. And it essentially gives that user the same abilities to edit and submit and interact with these plans just as if they were the primary lead listed on that contacts page. The real use of this is if you are some sort of, if you're in a role where you're overseeing or managing multiple plans, but they might have other people in those roles on the actual plans themselves, this is the right one you want. One of the things I always point out is that institutional or the system roles are hierarchical, which means that if you, for example, have the CCD, LACCD institution project manager role for K12 SWP, you will have access to all of the applications and plans for LACCD. If you just have it for Pasadena City College, then you just have it down here. If you have it for the regional level, you'll have it for all CCDs and all colleges within that region. Um, so these are really useful to have if you have problems, like typically getting access and you keep having to add yourself as a different things on the contacts page. Just request from the help desk that they give you institutional project manager role. That's an important one. These are also system roles that are required just for the program to operate. Certifying authority is set at the system level, so is the selection committee chair and the regional fund monitor. Of course, that's set by the chancellor's office. These folks, the approving authority is essentially who approves things, and the selection committee chair runs the selection committee process for the region. So these have to be set at the system level. Most regions have these set right because that's pretty commonly used. But if you have them wrong, it's just a help desk ticket to fix them up and make sure the right people have those roles. So yeah, roles are very important to all of Nova. Now let's talk about the actual program. So here's all the different functions that this system does on you can create applications, you submit applications. There's a award acceptance process. We can make changes to the plan. We can fill out fiscal reports. We can change fiscal reports and close the plan. This is essentially the whole life cycle of K12 SWP and Nova. So we start with creating an application. A couple things I always point out before we go any further is most pages of your application, once you actually get into it, are going to have guidance text. Read this, it's up top. It's very useful. They don't put this in here for no reason. So make sure you're reviewing guidance text at the top of every screen. And then there's also something called helper text, which is actually the little gray text in between when you have individual narrative questions or any sort of questions. So just make sure you're always reading the suggestions and the helper and guidance text. It makes things easier. So in order to create an application, you go to K12 SWP on the programs menu, which here, let me actually just do that right now. Let me just switch my screen. Let me just show you. This is a sandbox, by the way, of course, where we do our testing and training in Nova. This is not real Nova. Oops, gotta hit the share button. Yep. So this is Sandbox. This is not real Nova. Sandbox.nova is how you know. Also, this big blue banner up here. This is refreshed every month, so it just gets reset. Right now in Sandbox, just for testing purposes, we have the 2627 application open. So you can see if you want to create something, this will be in a few months open for real. But if you want to create something, you just click on this create application up here, name it, and choose your lead agency. So let's just go with Oak. There's always an Oak. Or uh, what's a good high school? There we go. Oh yeah, it is. This is being funky. Sorry. Los Angeles. There it is. Once you start typing, it will generally pop them down. Sometimes it takes a minute. But let's choose our lead agency. Let's just go with, I don't know why. Being weird. Let's just choose LAROP as the lead. You hit continue and it spins up the application. A couple things to point out here right off the bat. Because I created this, I'm going to be listed as the project lead contact. We'll go back to that in a minute. Just want to flag that. But essentially, that's how you create an application. It's very easy. It does not require any special roles in the system to do that. Pretty much anyone can create an application. Of course, to actually submit and get it approved is a different question. But any user with the ability to see this applications page, which is anyone with an EDU account, can technically come in here and create an application. Let me go back to my PowerPoint real quick. All right. So yeah, we made the application. One thing to point out is there is a limit of 3 applications per CDS code, so you can't just spam it. Now that we've made our application, this is what I was showing on the screen. A couple things to point out about that page is that this, on the left-hand side, you have what's called a workflow. These are all the steps that need to be completed to actually submit this thing. You'll see these incompletes move to completes essentially when actually here laser pointer. There we go. You'll see these incompletes move to completes once you've done the sections. It's a good way to track progress. Also, something I always point out is the error stepper over here. Some of these steps on K12 get pretty lengthy, and the error stepper will show you what you haven't completed yet. An error is essentially something that hasn't been done. The system will also flag it in red for you, but the error stepper allows you to just go through and focus on the things you haven't completed yet. And then help desk. There's this little widget down here on the bottom. If you need a help desk question, you click on that, pops up a little window. So, first step is pathway identification. Very simple on this one. All you do is select your region, which in this case was LA. Select the region within you're applying. That's pretty important because K12 SWP is all regional based. So that's the first thing you do is choose your region. And then there's some assurances, right? Click yes on all of them. Takes 2 seconds. And then this first step is done. Then we get to the lead and partner agencies. This is kind of where you, as the person that created it, should be representing the lead agency. But you can add partner agencies. You add them by CDS code. Like I mentioned, Nova gets an annual update of the latest CDS code. So all schools should be in there if the CDE knows they exist. And one thing to keep in mind is that because all of this is very connected, right? If you're adding a bunch of partners, that's the way it's supposed to be. But if you're adding a bunch of partners, that's also increasing your overall ADA rate, which might increase your ability to ask for more money because K12 uses a financial band system where you have to have a certain amount of ADA in order to apply for more and more money. You have to have a lot of kids, essentially, or students, sorry. You have to have a lot of students in order to ask for the full amount. Um, so if you add a bunch of partners and they're very financially tied in, they're giving you positive considerations because they're rural and they're giving you additional ADA that's allowing to ask for more money, they might be contributing to the match. If you remove them later, it's just a pain because everything's so interconnected. It can be done, but it creates problems. So make sure your partners are in it for the long haul. It's the bottom line. So add a participating school. This is for your normal agency. That's the first thing we do. This is the lead agency. You add schools to say which schools are involved because it might be the district or just the high school as lead agency. So we add schools by CDS code, the first step. And then we add, oh yeah, here's the process for adding the school. Once you click this add school button, it lets you open up this add schools, and then you add the school. And then we add the contacts for that school we add contacts because the first institution is always the lead. The person that created the application is automatically the project lead contact, like I just showed. So if you create it, you'll automatically be set to project lead, but you do still need to create an alternate. This is just kind of a backup person. To add the agency contact, you type in the user, choose the responsibility. This will only have a few options to it for K12. It has these, project lead, alternate lead. These are some optional ones, project contributor reporter, oh, that is actually on there. I take it back. Gotta fix that. But there's only a few options here, but the ones you need to focus on are the project lead and project lead alternate contact. If you do add partner agencies, like I mentioned, it's optional, but scrolling down that same page, you click the add partner agency button and add them. You do it by type because type matters, especially when it comes to match. Because different agencies have different match requirements. And once you choose a type, the system will automatically filter this one. It's the same thing. It's the type ahead field where you start typing a name in and it pops up the institutions allowed. But if you type COE over here, it'll only have COEs show up over here. So it'll actually filter it for you, makes it a little bit easier. But one thing to remember is just the CDS code's in here for a reason. Obviously, there's only one LA COE, but there's a lot of Oak schools, right? So the CDS code's in here for a reason. Make sure you're confirming if you have a commonly named school or district. Once we have our main agency set up, we say whether or not once we have the partner agency added in here, we're choosing whether or not the partner is providing funds or services. This does have implications later in the application, especially in the budget portion. Because if they're providing funds, then they're obviously um, part of the match, and if they're just services, then they're just involved. Also for partners, this is again for the partners, we do the same process of adding schools and contacts. And if you want to add additional partner agencies, you just click this Add Partner Agency button. If you want to remove them, there's this trash can button over here to remove the agency. If you are just starting your application, it's not that big of a deal, but if you've already like submitted it and it's certified and they've been factored into your budget and everything like I mentioned, this does become more problematic. So make sure you're making your changes early. Same process. For the partner agencies, you only see two options, the project contributor and reporter and the project viewer. This is required. Project contributor and reporter is required for all partner agencies. Project viewer is optional if you want kind of a read-only. Yeah, read-only look for anyone that just wants to follow along. But like I mentioned, every partner needs at least one representative in the plan, and this is what that is for your K12 partners. All right, after we get to the partner sections, and that's all complete, the next section is positive considerations. This is kind of like extra credit for the application. It's worth 13 plus 3 points, which means there's an initial 13 points for the first group of questions, and there's an additional 3 points for some supplemental questions. Um, some of these points are, or some of these questions are pre-filled. Like I mentioned, Nova already knows rural designations and unemployment. So if you scroll down on this page, you'll see a few are pre-filled, right? They are not even editable. They're just already filled out for you. But essentially, we answer questions here. There's questions, you answer them. If you answer them in certain ways, you get up to 16 points. I think that's been true for the last couple of years. They do change this occasionally, but I believe this is still true for round 8. It might not be true for round 9. They might actually do something else for the scoring. But there will be positive considerations because positive considerations are directly out of legislation. So we've added our lead and partner agencies. We've done our positive considerations, which are largely based off of the lead and partner agencies. But we still need to add our higher ed and collaborative partners because this, of course, is meant to be a partnership between K12 and higher ed. So at least one community college is required to be involved. And the chancellor's office recommends that the career education dean be the contact for the CCC or district. So that just means that when you actually get to your contacts down here, career education dean is a good one. But to add a higher education partner, you have to add at least one. So this is already kind of ready for you. You either choose district or college over here, and then again, type ahead. There's your options over here. For example, but notice I put district in, so it's only giving me districts, so it filters that. So choose your higher ed partner up here. The rest of this will populate itself once you do. Then you add the contact the same way. This is the required one. Same as with your other partners, you need that project contributor and reporter. Like I said, this should be the career education dean if that's a position that they want in here. That's the recommendation. Once you add the partner, you can remove them. Same as every other partner. You can add higher ed partners, remove higher ed partners. Click here to remove them. Once this is fully done, you can hit add higher ed partner. It doesn't let you partially add multiple at a time. You have to complete one before this button becomes active. Once you're done with higher ed partners, you can add collaborative partners. These can be a lot of things. There is no actual, I think this can be, your nonprofits or your different kinds of organizations. It doesn't have to be an educational one, which means this is a very, very loose list, right? I mentioned that CDS codes are updated, so that list is good and that list is solid. The collaborative partners list is chaos. So if you have a collaborative partner you normally work with, they might have 2 or 3 entries in here, like a lot of nonprofits or businesses or different kinds of things in the Nova database get added every year. So they might have multiple entries. It's kind of chaos. So try to find their name before adding a new one, but if you do need to add a new one, you can do it here. For the partner roles, right? Type. You have to choose what their role is. If they have a fiscal financial contribution, this is going to require them to have a match portion, for example. So some of these do have implications later in the application. But once you add them, same thing down here, you add contacts, right? They also need a project contributor and reporter, also required for all the partners, because they might have a role in the fiscal reports as well if they're financially involved. After we get through the partners and we know everyone involved with this, we move on to the problem statement and problem objectives piece. One thing I was to point out here is that Nova has essentially three text box sizes: 100 characters, 2,500 characters, and 5,000 characters. That doesn't mean you need to use all of the space. Please don't. Don't make the people reviewing these have to read through extra thousands of characters because you think you need to fill the box. Answer the question. It's not required to use all the space. It's just kind of what the system does. Uh, for the problem statement and problem objectives, this one is four narrative questions, 2,500 characters each. Answer them, move on. Pretty simple one there. The next section down is problem objective. It's just further down the same page. It's just scrolling down that same page. This section is also four questions, narrative questions, 2,500 characters each. Again, write them down. One thing I always point out with these long narrative questions is don't just put them into Nova, right? Nova does a thing where it automatically saves pretty much the second you input data, right? If you have like a 2,000 character um, answer and you change a word of it, it'll automatically save that. You can navigate away and come back. Similarly, though, if you accidentally delete everything and then close the window and lose your ability to control Z, essentially, then you might lose it, right? Because it automatically saves the empty field just as much as it saves the field with 2,000 characters in it. So make sure, generally, good idea, do your work in Word or some word processing tool, copy and paste it into Nova. Don't try to work directly into Nova. It automatically saves, but that's a double-edged sword. Um, Once we get through kind of our problem statements and objectives, the last part of this screen that I just wanted to show out or show to y'all is the local regional economies. If this shows you all of the partners, all the educational LEA partners you have, and shows the data. There's nothing on the screen you can do anything with, but just if you wanted to see kind of the records that are going into that positive considerations, that are pre-populating some of those answers, it shows it at the bottom of this page, right? So none of these are rural, so the positive consideration on rural for this particular application is going to be no, and you can't change that. Next section is industry sectors and pathways. Um, so it's kind of cool, there's a crosswalk here. You choose your CDE sectors and automatically crosswalks them over to the chancellor's office or to the community colleges sectors because everyone uses their own sectors, which is just kind of crazy. But the system does have that crosswalk built in, so you choose your target sectors. Then you choose your pathways and design purpose. On this page, or on this section, you're going to choose your design purpose, which is these checkboxes. And then under each design purpose, you can choose individual pathways. The system has a relatively recent log of all pathways available. So essentially, you just choose which of these is your design purpose, choose the pathways underneath them. And that completes your industry sector design purpose or industry sector and pathways that you're targeting. Once you have your targets, then it's how you're going to get there, the work plan. This also has some interesting functionality in it. One of the things is that every time you click one of these quality strategies, so there's four options here, it pops up two questions below. So you need to choose at least one of four of them. You can choose all four if you want. One of the things it points out is you don't need to choose all four. Don't try to boil the ocean. If you have a focused plan, that's almost a better thing sometimes. So clicking these buttons opens up these two questions for each button. See, college and career exploration. You have to describe what's doing or what you're doing under that category. and then outcomes that you expect in that particular category. So underneath that, these are just standard questions. You have additional narratives. There's 3 questions that to fill out. Again, these are kind of long narrative questions. Put your answers in, read the gray text again. That's why I started this whole thing talking about read the gray text. There's a lot of instructional, helpful things built in here. And then the last portion of this part of this page is leveraging other funds. Like I mentioned, that's a big focus of K12 is leveraging other funds. So say which additional funding sources you are matching or leveraging in support. So once our work plan is done, the next section is the budget. I do have points in here. This was from round 8. It might change in round 9, but for now, this is accurate. Uh, for budget, 10 points. One thing to point out is up here you have this budget summary, budget match summary, which is just a good, helpful guide. Like I mentioned, the ADA will govern the max request amount. A high enough ADA means you can get up to 2 million bucks. A lower ADA means it's restricted. And that is a combined ADA from all the LEAs involved. The budget on this is a little bit different than other programs you might be familiar with. It's just a straight grid, 1 to 7,000, normal object codes, but you add them to this grid here based on the 3 years. Keep in mind the first year is only half a year. These are both full years. Yeah, that's true because it starts in January and this is fiscal year. You put the narrative explanations of what these dollars refer to beneath. So underneath the grid, there's individual and narrative boxes for each of the sections you chose, and you can just go ahead and kind of say what you're spending the money on in a narrative way underneath, explain your dollars. And of course, one thing to point out is that this is a different budget for every single lead or partner. So this is specific to West Covina in this example, but there's going to be the same exact section duplicated for any other partners that are funded. And then for all your match institutions, you click this Add Participating Institution Match button, and it allows you to choose from the institutions that you already have listed. So this is choose your partners and say which ones are the match. So I would choose, whichever the partners is doing a match, or maybe the lead LEA is also doing a match. So you choose the institution and then fill out the match. Pretty simple interface here. How much? Source of the funds. Pretty simple. But this again is per institution matching. This is not an overall match. You'll need to complete this for every single institution that's providing match funding. After the budget, the next section is supporting documents, which is just there's a requirement that statement assurance for lead and partners and a letter of commitment for the CCCs. Letters committed from other partners are not required. They are expected, which I think means someone will be reviewing it, but the system will not stop you from submitting without it. So on the supporting documents page, you hit the there's a add document button. Pretty simple. You choose the institution. Like I mentioned, you have to have some of these are per institution. So you choose the institution, you choose the type of document, you upload something, and then you're done. The system will tell you what you have left to do. I'm skipping over that a little bit fast because we are running a little bit short on time. Once you are done with the last step, which is actually that supporting documents step, you get down to preview and submit. A couple things to point out about the preview and submit. If you do want to share this with anyone, the share button's good. It allows you to send it as an email. It also allows you to print a PDF to review. Yep, applications can be submitted and unsubmitted multiple times, but of course, it must be in submitted state at the deadline. So whatever the deadline is, if it's midnight on, Friday, October 1st or whatever it is, make sure that your application is in a submitted state at that point. There is no way around it. It has to be submitted at that point. So yeah, to submit, when this is all complete, when these all say complete, which is not in this example, you go down to preview and submit, hit the submit button, and that's it. Pretty simple, but everything has to be done first. Once it's all submitted, we go through the award process. One thing to point out is that K12 is all, like I mentioned before, it's all custom very much customized based on the whole regional nature of the application process. Regions assign reviewers, Nova, and a selection committee chair. Nova takes those reviewers and separates them, three per application, distributes them randomly. The selection committee chair has the ability to go in and change things if they need to for conflict of interest purposes or something like that. But generally speaking, the selection committee chair can't see what they're scoring or anything up until the reviews are done. It's very much designed to be a um, manipulation proof system in some ways, where you can't like remove reviewers that are scoring things low just because they're scoring things low and you want that application to do better. It's built so that's harder to do. Um, but once the reviews are all done and they're locked, then the reviews go to the selection committee or the scores go to the selection committee and they make their choices. Every region scores things a little bit differently, how they deal with outliers and things like that. So Nova doesn't really accommodate that because it varies by region. And generally, most years there needs to be some sort of manual stuff in the background to fudge things depending on regional variances and scoring. But that is within the rights of the regions and how they run things. So the committees can either request or can award sorry, the committees can either record the committees can either award the requested amount, they can also go less or they can go more, right? So if they say, oh, you asked for $1 million, you get $1 million, then the LEA, the lead in this case, has the ability to either reject and that automatically becomes a certified plan. The application converts to a certified plan, or they can say, you know what, no, we don't want it anymore. We're just going to say no. If the committee awards more money, which happens sometimes, if there's not enough applicants, they have like an extra 100 grand in the budget, they want to separate it or they want to just award a little bit extra, they can say more money. And the LEA has the choice to either say, no, you know what, we're going to reject that additional offer. We just want to go with our original amount. And then it automatically goes to a certified plan. If they say, oh, yeah, we like more money and they accept the offer, then the plan is still created, but it's as a draft because they need to update their budget to account for the extra money. And then the region approves that and then it becomes certified. Similarly, if there is enough money to go around and the region says, hey, we like your application, but we're offering you 50 grand less than you asked for, they similarly need to accept that offer. It goes back into a draft plan. They need to adjust at this point their budget and work plan to account for the less 50 grand. And then the region again approves that and it moves into the certified plan. Everyone always has the ability to reject and say, no, we're not going to do this after all. So that's I'm going through that quickly, but that's just kind of the how things work. When the application is awarded, it becomes a plan. That application is locked and cannot be changed. And any changes to budgets or anything, that's all done under the plan, not the application. So when we actually talk about plan or budget changes, this is how we do it. The draft application is submitted, the award is made, that plan then, or the application then becomes a plan, right? And this could involve those extra steps we just talked about, but eventually the award turns into a certified plan. Now, in order to actually edit the plan, you can make it editable. It might go back to edited, then becomes edit submitted, and then it comes back to a certified plan, but it never goes back to a draft technically. Because once something's been certified and awarded, it's never technically a draft again. Nova never considers a draft because that money is spoken for and it's looked as you're editing a living plan at that point. Um, and then of course you can close it, which is something we'll talk about. So this is kind of how the status works. These are all kind of labels you'll see on the status in the system. Okay, so making a change, right? If your plan's been approved, it's been certified, you're working, and you need to make a change. So, if you have a change of 10% more than if you're changing more than 10% of any line item, that's line item is object codes 1 through 7,000, or you're adding or deleting budget items, you need the consortium's approval first. Budget modification requests do not impact the total allocation for the LEA. That is true. They're only for allowable costs, and they must be consistent with the purpose and intent of the approved budget. So if you just have change under 10%, you can do nothing. I have in here, you can use the new edit feature, which we'll go over very quickly, but you can just do nothing if it's under 10%. Um, Variances of less than 10% by object code. That's an important distinction there. Um, Variance of over 10% by object code, you can just go ahead and submit the fiscal reporting a little bit off, and that's okay. You can just do nothing. You can also use the new edit feature in Nova, but I'm recommending you be very careful about that because the new edit feature does not necessarily comply with K12 SWP rules. Specifically, and I'll go over this in a second, Nova has this new edit mode. If you look up on the right-hand corner on the screen, there's this edit button. This is true for a lot of programs and it's really useful. The problem is that this mode allows you to edit your plan, your narrative portions, and the budget within a certain threshold. Now, the budget is currently set to 10% on K12 SWP, but that's 10% of the overall budget, not 10% of each individual line item. So that's what I'm saying. Um, if it's an under a 10% change, you might just skip this whole edit mode unless you really, really want to keep your books accurate. If you do use the edit mode, you'll see that, this is how the budget looks. It tells you, you're moving money around. It shows I took 3 grand from here, moved it down here, currently modifying 3 grand. It would let me modify up to 10% of the whole budget. Like I mentioned, that's kind of a problem because it doesn't jive with the K12 rules. So anyway, the system does allow you to make brief edits, but I'm not going to go too much into this because it doesn't necessarily comply. You can also make edits to your work plan or the narrative sections. You'll see this little pencil in here that's marking where I'm editing things. So you can also do that if you need to. And when it's done, you can either submit your changes, you discard your changes, exit edit mode. Those are your options. Exiting edit mode saves your changes, but doesn't actually save them. It actually just kind of returns the plan to its former state. But if you go back into edit mode again, they'll still be there until you submit or discard them. But let's keep going because we're running short on time. Changes over 10%. Like I mentioned, technically you don't have to do anything for changes under 10% per line item. But if changes over 10%, here's the process. Start with LARC. There's a budget modification request form on the LARC website. Fill it out, submit it, they'll respond. Once LA responds and approves, or, well, if they approve it, then you can make changes in Nova. In Nova, because it's an over 10% change, by definition, you'll need to go the long way. You can't use that new edit mode that I was showing. You'll need to actually decertify it, update your budget, recertify it, or resubmit and get it recertified. So essentially on the preview and submit page, there's this decertify button. And then when you make your changes, you hit submit again. It has to get reapproved, which is currently the certifying authority is set as Mark. And there's a whole list of people also, but I'm just leaving that one. And that returns your plan back to certified state. Just remember, you don't necessarily need to go through that process for anything under 10% per line item. But if it's over 10%, that's the process. And make sure you follow the LARC process before making changes in Nova. And then make sure you're completing any fiscal reporting before requesting a budget change, because that is going to be important. And yeah, don't leave your plan edited. Some people leave their plan in draft status, which means they won't be able to fill out fiscal reports, which is a giant pain as well. All right, fiscal reporting, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go this really quickly. So fiscal reporting, 2 per year. Plans must be certified, like I mentioned. If you leave your plan in draft form, this is actually no longer true. This changed recently. Plans must be certified for reports to be editable. You can still find them now. It used to be they disappeared. Now they're just locked. So plans must be certified for reports to be editable or submitted. It's true. There are 2 biannual reports a year. All reports are cumulative, which matters for reasons that I'll go over in just a sec. And then Nova distinguishes between all different agencies. So the way that K12 works is you have essentially X amount of sections of your fiscal reports that correspond to each agency. And depending if they're funded or provide a match, the sections might be different. Skipping over the contacts for time purposes. This is how you find fiscal reporting. I'll just say on the contacts, if you have the right roles, you should have access to your fiscal reports. If you can't, if you're trying to fill out a fiscal report for your agency and you can't do it, you probably don't have the right roles, submit a help desk ticket. Fiscal reporting can be found by either the long way here or by going through directly through fiscal reporting on this side. You can use the filters to find your report, or like I mentioned, this is on the preview and submit page. There's a direct report to fiscal reports for the particular plan. This is the fiscal report submission status. Like I mentioned, fiscal reports are generally collections of reports for every partner. The status page is a really easy way to see who is submitted and who is not, so you know who to bug. Once these are all submitted, it automatically goes to the certifying authority for approval. So this is the expenditure portion of it. See how much money you spent. This is the match portion of it. If your college or LEA has a match, then you'll say the amount of match. You'll also be required to upload some sort of document to prove the match. Right now, there is a custom survey for these, but it's not really used. They just have one question generally on this custom survey, which is the progress. And that's it. They might add more. Who knows? And then once you're done with your section, you submit it. You'll have to hit the submit button for every report. Once you have every kind of LEA's report submitted, it automatically goes to the approver, to the certifying authority for approval. You need to make changes to fiscal reports. Like I mentioned, everything in NOVA is cumulative and sequential for fiscal reporting. So that means if you're on report 4 of 5 and you need to make changes to your original report from Q1, you need to unsubmit and decertify every single report going back to Q1, make the change, and then submit and recertify everyone going back to the current time. It's pain, but that's how it has to be done because everything is cumulative. Closing plans, it's the last thing you should be doing, or it's the last thing you should do for all of these. Not the last thing you should be doing, it's the final thing you should be doing for all of these. Uh, Fiscal reporting must be completed through the stated end date. So once you've completed fiscal reporting and said, hey, this is what we've done with all the dollars, you can close the plan. You should do so. It's a good habit. It should align with the reversion of funds that happens every May, unused funds to the Chancellor's office. To close a plan, you just go up here on the preview and submit page, hit close plan, say, kind of, have you spent the funds? Have you not? Make sure your fiscal reporting is done. If it's not done, it'll say incomplete and won't allow you to finalize the process. But once it's done, you can close it, gets approved by the certifying authority, and that plan is officially done. You've spent all that you're going to spend, you're done with it. All right. Additional resources. Make sure to check out the NOVA Help Desk. The Chancellor's Office has a lot of FAQs and support materials for K12. And like I mentioned, the primary group that runs your region's K12 SWP is the regional consortia. So start with the regional consortia. A lot of them have really good references and resources for this, including LA. LA's got a really good resource on the webpage. Check them out if you have any questions. And also keep in mind that the Chancellor's Office does not actually manage this program. They manage the system, but this program is managed by your region. So judgment calls and things like that start with LARC. And that is it. And we are just at time. So a little bit rushed in the last bit there. Apologies.
No problem. Thank you so much, Ryan. Are there any questions? I just want to make sure if there's
Yep.
anything that anybody has, please unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you like. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. This was very informative. It's a lot of information. And thank you, everyone, for your participation. Please note you can always reach out to our team. Mark Banaj, our K14 TAP, Denise Vidro, she's our accountant, as well as Nane, who serves as our grant project coordinator, which most of you know, as she's been helping to support fiscal in our monthly calls as well. Additionally, we will have future training, so please make sure you check the LARC calendar for the training flyer. And also, all of the recordings will be on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your partnership, participation, and this important work you lead every single day to support our students and our region. Thank you again, Ryan, and thank you everyone for your participation today and time. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.